Thank you.
Congress has until the end of the weekend to agree on a deal to fund the government. Congress passed a 2-day extension for funding on Friday. It prevented a government shutdown, but it only lasts through Sunday. The extension also buys additional time for lawmakers to negotiate a new COVID relief package. Chip Reed is at the White House with the latest.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no.
By voice vote, the Senate unanimously passed the short-term measure to keep the government afloat and allow negotiations to continue on a spending bill and a coronavirus relief package.
Both sides of the aisle are firmly committed to finalizing another major pandemic rescue package for the American people. As of right now, we have not yet reached a final agreement, regretfully.
The yeas are 320 and the nays are 60.
Earlier Friday, the House overwhelmingly passed the bill.
I urge my colleagues, join me in supporting the ongoing talks by adopting this clean, continuing resolution.
There's a little bit more time required to get this legislation finalized and drafted.
Bipartisan leaders in the House and Senate have been negotiating a $900 billion relief package for weeks. There remain sticking points, however, including a Republican-backed provision to wind down the Federal Reserve's emergency lending power during the pandemic. Some Senate Democrats accused Republicans of trying to insert a poison pill in the bill. Connecticut Democrat Chris Murphy tweeted, "It's fascinating how Republicans were fine with this Fed power when Trump was president, but now, all of a sudden, it's bad, almost like they want to use the COVID relief package to sabotage Biden's presidency." Both sides are under pressure to get something passed before the holiday break.
Majority Leader McConnell and I do not agree on much, but as I understand it, we are in agreement on at least one point, and that is that the Senate cannot go home until a COVID emergency relief bill is passed.
So Congress now has 2 days to pass a COVID relief package that will probably include another round of stimulus checks and a $1.4 trillion spending bill to avoid a government shutdown, and get all of that here to the White House as soon as possible for the president's signature. Lana?
Chip, thank you. Joining me now to discuss this in greater detail is Jacqueline Alemany. She is a political reporter at the Washington Post and the anchor of the Power Up newsletter. Jacqueline, good to see you. So lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have agreed to push those negotiations into the weekend. How are things going on the Hill? Are lawmakers on the right track, or is this to be taken as an indication of desperation?
Well, look, Lana, we just heard from the number 2 Senate Republican who just extended the deadline potentially even further, telling my colleagues Jeff Stein and Mike DeBonis that this could actually go until Monday for Congress to sort out the terms of the relief package that has eluded them for months now. But look, we are in a little bit of a different situation than we have these past few months, in that Congress is facing a really tight deadline. Obviously, we're heading into the Christmas holidays, and we're also on the verge of the expiration of a few really key deadlines, which is that on December 26th, unemployment money expires for 12 million Americans. On December 31st, the eviction moratorium expires for around 30 million potentially people at risk. And then on the 31st, paid leave credit also ends. So this is a different situation in terms of the pressure of millions of Americans facing an eviction and benefits cliff. But look, there's still a few huge issues that Congress faces in terms of the process that they're facing going ahead. To get this done in record time, they're going to need zero dissent from both chambers of Congress. And then there's issues of the terms of the relief package, as you noted and Chip Reed just noted. There's the bright red line of the power of the Federal Reserve emergency lending powers. And then there's still the terms of unemployment and the stimulus checks, which members have said is a little bit easier to figure out. But these are still pretty big things that Congress has grappled with for months now. Look, both chambers are meeting with, the Republican chambers meeting with Steven Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, at 1 p.m. So we'll get a further update after that meeting happens.
And Jackie, as you mentioned, Senator Thune says that these negotiations could roll into Monday morning, and the stopgap extension is only through this weekend. How far apart are both sides of the aisle in the negotiations process? Tell us a little bit more about what's considered to be the non-negotiable areas of contention, and if there is anything that they are currently agreeing on. You know, sometimes it's just nice to hear that too.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. There is a lot in here that Congress does agree on. Some basic terms like extending federal unemployment aid, providing a stimulus check directly to Americans who qualify for it, providing money to small businesses, things that will help stabilize the economy. But the bright red line, in the words of Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, still is the Federal Reserve power, which, you know, has become an even bigger point of contention because Democrats released and relinquished their previous red line about providing extra money to state and local governments. And so I don't think that we would see Democrats as worked up about this if they hadn't excluded state and local aid from the relief package. But with the GOP now so dead set to limit the emergency tools of the Federal Reserve, this is really problematic. There's also smaller things, but you know, things that I think that Democrats realize that they can potentially flesh out in an additional package once Joe Biden assumes the presidency and the races in Georgia are over, which is, you know, how much those stimulus checks are going to be, and then also who will qualify for unemployment insurance. But the issue of stimulus checks is pretty fascinating because President Trump himself has been in favor of, you know, a $2,000, $1,200 direct stimulus payment to Americans, and his own advisors has told him that this could completely blow up negotiations if he presses for this, because his own Republican Party is dead set against making that figure so big.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if we can just take a step back, Jackie, because I think at times this becomes a lot of white noise for people who care really about whether or not they're going to get federal assistance when they are looking, as you said, at the edge of a cliff. And this extension buys Congress additional time on both a coronavirus relief deal and a future spending bill. The two are obviously intertwined, but they're not the same. Does one negotiation take precedent over another? How does the coronavirus relief package actually impact next year's government spending bill?
Yeah, I mean, it is quite possible if Congress decides that they can't push anything through, that they scrap relief talks after, again, months of failing to push something through and just decide to pass a massive government funding package. But they are intertwined because, again, that government funding package needs to include, you know, for budgetary reasons, how much the relief package is going to cost. But you are right in that these, you know, these things don't really matter to Americans who are struggling to put food on the table, worried about getting evicted in a few weeks, and facing, again, an evictions and benefits cliff. So I think some of the arguments that are most important to Americans are the fact that Republican lawmakers currently want to exclude people receiving $100 a week in base and state unemployment aid from qualifying for federal supplemental aid. So these are the kinds of arguments that I think really are pertinent and matter to the American people that Congress is still really hung up on.
Yeah, that's where people are just feeling that gut punch, that it seems like there's political bickering and not a lot of interest in helping Americans who are struggling right now. All right, Jacqueline Alemany, thank you.
Thanks, Lana.